We'll go under review.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday evening. Thank you all so much for being here for this week's episode of Under Review. My name is Joe DeRosa, and you can find me on Twitter /X at @show_DeRosa. You can also find me on the new and improved, or it's been around, but also improved, Blue Sky Social at joederosa.bsky. .social. It is an exciting time to be a Bills fan, everybody, because the bye week is upon us and we are going into it with a win, but not just any win, a win over vaunted rival, the Kansas City Chiefs, in a very epic back and forth game that we've grown to expect from these kinds of matchups with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and co. It was a game that was certainly stressful. It was a game that had us on the edge of our seats. However, we came through with a victory as the Bills take down the Chiefs 30-21 with a multitude of impact players to be highlighted in this episode tonight. And joining me tonight is one of my good friends at the network, someone who has come on the show frequently, who I always enjoy speaking with, someone who has great insight and provides great data for all of you. His name is Mr. Chris Seth, who goes by @LowBuffa on Twitter. I want to say that's a chopped up version of Buffalo, I would assume, but you never know these days. But Chris, thank you for being here again. I appreciate you. How you doing tonight, my friend?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joe. I appreciate you inviting me on after a win. I don't want to come on after losses. Let's not do that. So wins only, especially big wins against rivals. If we limit it to those kinds of victories and appearances, that'll be great. Only good
everyone
vibes,
will. Everyone will associate you with good vibes and not bad vibes.
Absolutely.
Was the last time I had you on here after a loss? Was that after the Texans game? Or the Ravens game?
I honestly don't remember. It might have been after the Ravens game. Yeah.
Oh, damn! I set you up to fail, dude. I'm so sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And I'll tell you what, I earned it for being in my garage and letting my wife open the garage door in the middle of the show. So
that's top tier content. Yeah, if any of you are tuning into the show for the first time, I think it had to have been around that time. But go back and find the last episode we did with Chris. I think it was at the 54-minute or somewhere towards the end of the show. I just hear the door open and you look over and mute your mic, and I was trying so hard not to lose it on air because I was like, that was tremendous. And if that does happen again, it will equally be as funny. So don't worry.
Well, actually, I've done a little prep work. I've gotten ahead of it, and I got the groceries earlier this evening, so we are in the clear.
You hear that, everybody? His fridge is well stocked. That garage, I almost said grocery. That garage door is not opening up, I think. But even if it does, we will all have a good laugh. As Spin says, okay, Chris can't come on after any loss, so he better be on each week from here on out. And his final week is the Tuesday after the Super Bowl.
Chris, we go.
This is my promise to you, Chris. If the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl, please remind me too, because my brain is always active and I forget very easily. But if the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl this year, the episode will have you on it, as long as you're free, of course. Because if I would.
I'll probably be drunk in that case.
Yeah.
But I'd love it. That'd probably be good content.
I will also say this. I made a promise and I've proclaimed this to everyone. That includes my bosses, my family, my girlfriend. If the Bills do win the Super Bowl, I am not near Buffalo. I will be there. I will travel. I will be at that parade, and I'm going to feel the energy and have several at-bats with the like-minded Bills fans. But to all of you, again, thank you for being here. We appreciate you. RJ hits us with so Land Clark didn't screw us over. It's a Thanksgiving miracle. Still awful officiating. That is, the miss face mask on Ray Davis, I believe it was pretty egregious. But also it was getting called like that both ways. The Bills definitely benefited from some calls too, but officiating isn't really something I took a big exception for, big note of in this game. It felt pretty, Land Clarky, but in a way that it affected both teams equally. So, Chris, tonight's episode is really devoted to all of the impact players that affected this game. every positional group that I wanted to go through with you to just highlight really the ones that made the impact that allowed the Bills to have success on offense and on defense. And we're just going to start this episode off with Josh Allen because it's obvious that you have to start the episode off with Josh Allen. Josh Allen's basic stat line hits a 27 for 40 on his passing attempts and completions, 262 yards, 1 total touchdown passing, 1 rushing touchdown, and an interception that definitely felt a little awkward in the sense that there was a miscommunication. But Allen also tacked on extra rushing yards and was just an overall beast, especially when the game needed to be essentially controlled and put away, or else you would have had to deal with Mahomes. So, Chris, before we get into more of the nitty gritty of Josh Allen's performance, just your initial thoughts on him after this game.
No, can we be more convinced that he's the greatest player in team history? At this point, like, do we need more evidence to that fact? Like, obviously, to be the most accomplished player in team history, we need to see more playoff success. But I don't think it's arguable that he's not the most talented player the Buffalo Bills have ever had.
Yeah, dude. I mean, he's got a way to go in his career. He's only 28, and he is obviously still ascending as a pro, but he has just given you every reason to believe that at this point, he's still, in my eyes, is the most talented player you've ever had. And I think is very much shaping to be the GOAT of the Bills franchise. Yep. What he is able to do individually is absolutely unbelievable. And, you draft a guy like this to have the tools to be able to take you to this point. He has the freak arm, the freak athleticism, the rushing ability, but you see more from him in the midst of his unrefined nature when he's playing at YO, and you stick with him. And I think the thing to me is just like, look at where he is now. And I've, several criticisms of him on the show before because, I think I hold him to a very high standard. So I think he is shaping up to be that player, which is why when he has a bad performance, I'll call it out. But when you look at like the developmental curve for Josh Allen, and you see even this season, like how he's changed fundamentally as a quarterback, it's just so fun. It's so encouraging. You feel so good about his future as well, because those rushing plays, those big physical plays, even though that is what won you this game, they're not going to be there forever. So to see him playing a more like game managing, yak ability type of quarterback akin to the rivals they just beat, that makes me feel really good. And I'm super pumped to just be able to talk about another great performance for a quarterback that we've really, outside for many of Jim Kelly and maybe some of Ferguson, like been waiting their whole lives for. So like, let's go ahead and just talk more about this game from him, and talk to me about just anything you caught when you were watching it back, or anything you caught when you were, looking in the data that really struck, as just very much like telling that he right now might be the front runner for the MVP, and also just like what this could mean for this team going forward after the bye.
Yeah, in terms of the MVP, Aaron had a great question, on the post-game show for Cover One Buffalo last night, where he asked, "Has anybody ever won the MVP award from a single play?" And it's just a great question because it is a narrative award, absolutely, and so that type of play against an undefeated team, against the team that has been their biggest nemesis, for the last 4 years now, obviously. To get that kind of, that game clinching play on 4th and 2 to run it in and run over 5 other professional athletes on your way to the end zone, in pure rhinoceros fashion, like just, I think that play in terms of a narrative structure for the MVP race obviously gives him the edge. Probably we could look on BetUS tomorrow, I bet, if not today already, and he's probably the favorite in the MVP race. So I think, in terms of MVP, that play, even just one play, it's a signature moment, and that's a lot of what MVPs are built off of.
Yeah, no, and I think about, and this is not meant to express any sort of like backhanded comment or compliment to Lamar Jackson's MVP last year. I mean, personally, I thought that there were quarterbacks that put up more telling numbers that I thought deserved more merit. But ultimately, when you got to that December stretch and you saw, who was the front runner, as my AirPod just buzzed really loudly for whatever reason. I don't know if that just hurt on your end, but that hurt. Maybe that was a Ravens fan hacking into my computer. But
they are everywhere. You say a bad thing about Lamar Jackson, and they are everywhere.
Yeah, they somehow infiltrated. No, like I adore Lamar Jackson. Like, I don't know if I've ever expressed that on the show. He is one of my favorite players in the league, both on and off the field. Seems like a tremendous human, and he's a tremendous player. And I definitely thought he was in the conversation last year, but what really set him over the edge was that game against San Francisco, because at that time, you go up against what was seen as the juggernaut of the NFL, and this is like your opportunity to really change the perspective of your team. And he goes in there and he has an excellent game against a really good defense on the road. And that was the thing that kind of made you realize it didn't really matter what everyone else was doing, barring some exceptional stretch, which, you can make the argument that both Brock Purdy, Josh Allen had that. But it really came down to he played a really great game against a great team in a very dire situation that ultimately helped its team get more national recognition as far as like MVP conversation and really put him over the edge. And I think about that, and then I think about this season. I think Lamar is having a better season this year. Like, I think Lamar is playing out of his freaking mind, and he looks phenomenal. I think, he just played the Steelers and lost to the Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are just simply the Ravens' kryptonite. Like, they are the team that defends them the best. And it's hard to, you want to see Lamar win those games, but also that's just a tough defense that is killing everybody right now. I think he's still playing the best ball of his career. He looks phenomenal as a thrower, as a runner. But this moment in this game, that run from Josh Allen, to me, that is the MVP moment right now. And that is the narrative that's going to surround Josh and really this team going forward. And now it's the opportunity for Josh to pull away with the lead of the MVP odds. And that's really this stretch where you play San Francisco, LA, Detroit. Like, if you win, even if you just beat San Fran, I think that might be enough to just keep him over the edge of the MVP frontrunner conversation. So It's just cool to have this conversation. And I just absolutely love the fact that we are just watching Josh in a year that, they lose Stephon Diggs and they lose Gabe Davis. And you're thinking, what does the offense look like? And, they pivot and they have to go get Amari Cooper. That through it all, his metrics have still been great. I know as Spin brings up that, like, just probably for the volume, this is a down year statistically for Allen. He's averaging around 4,500 total yards and like 36 total touchdowns. Like, yeah, it might not be as voluminous, but it's still just so good to watch. And he hasn't been perfect, including this game, but I think it's enough to walk away with the MVP, assuming he can keep this pace. So, Chris, I mean, going back to you, this game specifically, getting more in the details of impacting the Chiefs game. What'd you see? What did you like? What were the things that you want to take away from this game and just tell people about that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, I guess the first thing I realized, was just my reaction to the game, because, everything gets heightened against the Chiefs, right? Like, we're all a little tense about it because we've still got this, younger brother thing going on with the Chiefs, and so everything's kind of heightened, and every mistake feels more important. And there were I was even questioning, oh, are we getting a rough Josh game here with a couple of passes that he had missed early on, one specifically to Samuel, on a screen that would have easily been a first down, and he dirted it at Samuel's feet or was offline a little bit. And I was like, what are we? Come on, Josh. Let's have good Josh all game long. And to step back though away from those heightened senses and realize, oh no, he was outstanding, yesterday, and especially in the second half. And to even if the stats don't look as as phenomenal as Lamar Jackson's do this year, the way he orchestrated that game yesterday, he was in complete control of the offense and didn't have to be Mountain Dew Josh or YOLO Josh or Sugar High Josh. He picked his spots for when it was necessary to be the super alien unicorn freak that he is. And, that was highlighted obviously on the 4th and 2 touchdown run. But, every time they needed him to be the freak, that's when it came out. But otherwise, he was in complete control of the game and himself. And, that was to step back out of my own, nervous mafia fandom and see him be in complete control of a game, against the best of the best, was a great thing to witness.
This was a game that I felt Josh, and to your point, you look at it and you say he's not that sharp, or maybe he's a little off. And, you go back and watch, and there are times absolutely where he misses a throw that he really wants back. And you can talk about the Samuel throw, or as Roy brought up, that I was going to bring up, the Morris play action shot, which
Yeah.
effectively they still got down the field, but you had a more comfortable icing of the game if you hit that throw. And it's also just juice because it's a deep ball, but also like it was I think he was on the run when he threw that ball too.
Yeah,
So
and he had more time than he gave himself,
Yeah.
and so and then ended up being short to Morris on it.
Yeah, and I look back at that and watching him, and I say this wasn't even his sharpest game, but it's also
Mhm.
the part of Josh that I do and I've always stuck with, and probably my favorite trait about him is the fact that in high leverage moments, he's not really one to falter. Very few times in his career could you actually look at like a very key situation like that Vikings game in 22 with the bum elbow and say like, okay, that's actually on Josh and he lost the game right there. But against the Chiefs, in not only a situation where he wasn't playing his cleanest ball, but also put in numerous third and longs because the rushing attack outside of 2 James Cook touchdowns and maybe a couple of runs with Ty Johnson was really getting shut down by a very good rushing defense, and now forcing them to play on third and long. Josh is still stepping up and completing a lot of these plays, and especially on the final 2 drives of the game that ended up being scoring drives, you watch as Josh just makes that obviously the key run that everyone has seen 30 times, or you could talk about the throw to Shakir that I think that was equally an exceptional play by Khalil Shakir. You could talk about the throw to Curtis Samuel when he was heated up by a blitz and he just got enough time and some good enough blocking to back foot that throw to Samuel and be able to get it in the end zone. Like, those are the moments to me that when I think about a potential rematch with Kansas City or the playoff runs that they could go on, even not even just this season, but in the future, I just look at it as that's always going to be a thing. And it always makes you comfortable with the idea that even when you go into such a very daunting matchup with really good defenses, there's just this part of Josh that is going to be locked in. And there's a part of him that no matter what the case is, he's going to try and make that freaking play, and usually comes through. And it's become a trend that he's more likely to do that than not. So, in this game, he was finished 10th overall in EPA, passing EPA. I think it was 7.8, with number 1 being Jared Goff at 34.8, which is just, that is,
they had a day. That was
like, I curse on this show, but like, I'm still going to apologize. That is fucking ridiculous. Like, that's disgusting.
Yes.
Like,
that is the way to describe that. Yes.
But like, he still had a solid day, as far as the metrics go. Again, the interception was a blemish. I partially attribute that to Knox stopping his route, or not stopping his route.
Happened there. Yeah.
I don't know if he expected that ball to go to him or not. I don't know if Josh thought he was going to keep running. Knox didn't know he was supposed to keep running. But regardless, like, he's also going up against a very good defense that, again, very disciplined rushing attack with a great interior D-line. It's expected that he's not going to play perfect. So just play good enough to win, and that's exactly what he did. And he put the cape on in key moments when you needed him. And again, you've rematched the Chiefs. This isn't the complete offense either, and it's not the complete defense either. There's still very much cosmetic changes that could impact this team in the future. So to win it now, have the tape out, but also be able to make adjustments yourself with players that you're going to have, personnel that you're going to have back. I'm very impressed. And with Josh Allen, what more can you say? Except right now, I think he's at the forefront of the MVP conversation. And right now, if it ended today, I think deserves to win it. So, Chris, any final thoughts on Josh before we go to the next positional group?
Yeah, so this is partially the team and also partially Josh, but like we're saying, the MVP is a narrative award. Part of the narrative is how are you in those money downs? What is third and fourth down? And on those late downs on Sunday, the Bills had 0.61 EPA per play on third and fourth down. Now, a lot of that's going to be tied in to the fourth down touchdown run, to seal the game. But compare that to the Chiefs being at negative 0.1 EPA per play on those late downs. Chiefs were 5 out of 10 on third down. Bills were 9 out of 15 on third down. Those late downs, those money downs, Josh had that offense functioning at a high level against, a top 5 defense in the league. And, that's where the money is. Go get it, baby.
Go get it. Keep it going. I would love for him to just get that award and get one more thing off his back. Like, you want to have an MVP winning quarterback, and there's been so many great ones in history that haven't had the luxury of winning the award. So for him to have the opportunity to get it this year would be just especially again with all the narratives around the team and the window closing and the proclamation of other teams in the East winning the division and the proclamation of them being done. One of those teams going through absolute hell right now.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
It's just, you listen, chat people, you have to be a sick individual to be enjoying the Jets' demise. In fact, if you put coughing in the chat, like if you pretended to cough in the chat, that would just be so messed up. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't act sick in the chat because you have to be a sick individual to be enjoying the Jets' downfall. But no, to have Josh at the forefront of the conversation with the narrative around this team is super cool. I'm really excited. Again, not the cleanest game, but going forward, I still think there's more great ball ahead of him, and I'm really excited for that challenge in 2 weeks. But let's pivot over to the offensive line, Chris, and a unit that, again, they were tested. They were absolutely tested because you're going up against one of the most, blitz-minded DCs in all of football. He loves doing it. I'm pretty sure they were still top 10 in the league. I think it was top 5 in the league when it comes to how often they blitz in this game individually. But just looking at it, a part of this is, and I made the note of this on Blue Sky, but a part of it is Josh Allen's escapability, right? And a part of it has to do with how good he is at navigating pressure, getting out of the pocket, expanding the pocket, being able to just get the plays continuing. But the Chiefs still registered 15 quarterback pressures and didn't get a sack. And I do have to give some flowers to the offensive line because on the plays where Josh Allen did have time, when extra men were sent, whether that was a 5, 6, or even more pressure, it was pretty well contained. And also, I want to shout out Eric for pointing this out, but the way the Bills block and how they are able to create lanes for Josh with this kind of concept that that sometimes a D-line is just going to win. A D-line is going to get by you. So how do we redirect them so that our quarterback can move out of the way? That's the thing for me that I watched in this game and, watched back on, defensive tape and just saw offensive tape and just said I got to tip my cap. It was a great performance. And I'm curious, Chris, your thoughts on this and, anyone you want to point that stood out to you.
Yeah. So using momentum against defenders is it's kind of that next level as a fan of understanding what we're watching, right? Because it can look like somebody can get beat dramatically. And all of a sudden that lineman is just washing that defender down away with their momentum, and there's nothing they can do. And oh, I thought you were completely beat, and actually you were, but you recovered. Great work. The one guy that I was most worried about going into this game, who no one is talking about him, and he wasn't really mentioned during the game, and that's that is the crown for an offensive lineman, was Ryan Vandemark. Spencer Brown misses this game, and we're going up against an excellent Chiefs defensive line, and we've got the backup right tackle. And, for his career, Vandemark has still played mostly left tackle. So him to only give up 2 pressures, for the game against that team, he got help, regularly throughout the game. Quentin Morris, had his most snaps of the year, I think, and actually spent most of them blocking. And, he was helping out significantly, and they did a really nice job of helping him. But Vandemark held up on his own. They didn't significantly change the offense just because he was in there. They still ran dart a number of times with him. They still, ran their mid-zone runs, still ran duo with him in there. Now, because they were facing the Chiefs, there was not that much success in the run game.
Yeah.
But the fact that he was not a turnstile against, Chris Jones when Jones would be lined up at end, or Karlaftis, who's having, really a breakout year for him. And the fact that he held his own against this team, and that we weren't constantly hearing his name mentioned as having gotten beaten again and again and again, I thought was a really good sign.
Yeah. It was reassuring because that just reaffirms my faith in the development of the offensive line, especially the depth, and the idea that, God forbid, one of these guys goes down, I can expect someone to hold their own. If that's got to be Dawkins, which I'm hoping isn't the case. He apparently said he was fine after the game, but we'll see in 2 weeks. But, Dawkins, Brown, and you have Ryan Vandemark go into a very high leverage game and be asked to, take the spot, as well as Richard Garage got some work in this game as well. And Alec Anderson always rotating in, of course. But seeing these three offensive linemen come in and perform their role well, or at the very least be serviceable, that's all I'm asking out of depth. And to be able to do that against the Chiefs pass rush, which is as good as any in the league, is just, it's reassuring. And it makes you feel really good about the fact that when you have a coach like Aaron Kromer who can bring these guys in with a vision in mind for what he wants out of them, if they're a more athletic guy, if they're not a more athletic guy, can still make it work. That to me is just everything, because that's the foundation, and that's going to bleed into Josh and how he plays quarterback. And knowing that if I have to have my backup right tackle protecting me, and yet he's still able to do it or just misdirect someone to be able to, recover from getting beat initially and give me that lane, I'm good. And that's huge. And I love that. But, I'd be remiss. And, this has been pointed out by people in our network. I know Eric, Anthony, plenty of people. Baldy did a thing on this too. But I got to shout out Osiris Torrance. I'd be remiss not to mention his name on this show because, when you're dealing with Chris Jones, and this was a matchup I called out last week of what I'm really keying to watch, like the biggest factor is whoever's matched up against Chris Jones. And I had concerns over it because Chris Jones is an individual game record. And Chris Jones can really destroy a lot of what you want to do. But Osiris Torrance did really well, held his own. And in the times where he did enough to be able to just give Josh Allen an extra second of time, which when you face elite pass rushers in the NFL, that's all you're asking for. You got a right tackle eventually go up against someone like, I'm thinking of some of the people that play, like Nick Bosa. If Spencer Brown goes up against Nick Bosa, if he's able to just get him wide enough to give Josh the ability to step up, that's still a win. And I feel like when you look at it on the TV angle and people will see like, an edge rusher get by, but Josh has to move. Like, as long as you did enough to give Josh the second, that's all I care about, because Josh can escape. And for Osiris Torrance, he had reps where he just shut Chris Jones down, and he had reps where he got kind of pushed to the side a little bit, kind of regains his legs and just navigates him. And to be able to do that against him, granted, Chris Jones, past 30, how much longer is he going to be this dominant pass rusher? I still think he is a dominant pass rusher. That's huge. So if you had like concerns over the interior offensive line too, that's another thing to quell it. And I'm really pumped about that and just happy for him as a second-year player in a really tough matchup. As RJ points this out, the guys at PFF that hate him because I think his pass blocking grade was like a 58 or something crazy.
It's like, who cares?
And I saw someone, I saw someone say like there should be a curve for when you face an elite pass rusher, and I tend to agree with that.
Absolutely, yeah. And like for as much as Torrance did have his struggles with Jones, and he did, like Chris Jones is gonna win reps, like with Aaron Donald gone, like he might be the best defensive tackle in the game right now. There are probably others who can argue that a little bit too, right? It's he's not as dominant in that position as Donald was, but like if he's not number one, he's not lower than 3.
No, 100%.
And, for the points where Torrance did struggle, he came through when it mattered most, and I can't find the clip that I cut of that last play, but you see the highlight of Josh's run for that touchdown, and Torrance owns Jones. Like he moves him 5 yards out of the gap that Allen ends up running through. And Chris Jones will take plays off, but he's not taking off 4th and 2 when the game's on the line. And Torrance owned him. Torrance moved another man against his will in a critical moment and won that rep. And, had a big part in playing in opening the hole that ended up being where Josh scrambled through.
That's an awesome point, and I didn't even think of that, like just phrasing it that way. But yeah, on a 4th and 2, that's Chris Jones territory, right? Like that's where he's going to get by the guard and ruin the play, and like that's where he's going to have his impact. And to be able to now confidently say that you had your second-year guard go up against him and redirect him and give Josh that lane, it's huge. And I just, again, I can't compliment him enough for a game like that where that was the matchup. And obviously Jones moved around sometimes and he would go to different spots, but it was really Torrance getting a brunt of the work. And, again, the fact that you have him paired with like a backup right tackle next to him too. So like that side of the line is getting tested. And they rose to the occasion, man. And again, do just enough to give Josh time. You'll have success. Obviously, I saw plenty of quality reps from McGovern as far as pass blocking goes. Again, like I give him credit for some of their blitz pickups, which look pretty clean for the most part. But a Spags blitzing team's going to get home at times, so Josh can just extend the plays there, get the ball out quickly. But also, again, like the running offense wasn't great, but you got to know who you're up against. And, Kansas City is one of the best, most stout rushing defenses in the league. Right now, they're currently 4th in EPA against per rush at a minus 0.14. So, like, you're not going up against anybody that you should be expecting crazy runs. But why you brought up this comment from Tank Ninja earlier, because they did. James Cook had 2 really nice runs.
Big touchdowns.
Huge touchdowns, the one to the edge and then that one up the middle, which, I'm going to pivot this now to running back room, Chris, because obviously, it wasn't the best day for them. The biggest rusher of the day outside of Cook and the 2 touchdowns was Josh Allen. But James Cook on that second touchdown run, this is the thing I love about watching him and seeing like how he's blossomed over the past couple of years. So he starts his run to the left. He matches the linebacker, and then he just makes that quick cut and gets the linebacker on skates and able to create that hole that was created by his IOL. Like, that to me is the thing about Cook that I see. And I'm like, this guy's for real, because that real-time processing to be able to kind of know the direction he's got to go in just on a whim, especially knowing how the blocking is going to go in the direction they're going and the hole that creates. Like, he deserves credit, because that second touchdown run, I get it was closer to the end zone. That's still an impressive run, just seeing how he did it kind of on a more like, you look at it closer. So I'm curious about your thoughts about running back room, James Cook, things you wanted to point out as well.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more fun right now to just talk about the Cook touchdowns, because there was a lot of rough sledding there for the running backs. I think they ended up with like 19 attempts for like 49 yards, something along those lines. It was not pretty in terms of, just kind of plodding along. But we also have to understand that Kansas City's defense is special against the run. I think their DVOA against the run right now is like negative 30%. So they are outstanding against the run. But the thing that I like pointing out in the touchdowns is Cook, when he came in, he's going to be this passing down specialist, little scat back guy, and especially between last year and this year, he has shown a real increase in power. He is running over guys. Like, he made contact. I can't remember who 6 is for the Chiefs right now, but he ran over 6 at the 2-yard line.
I'll look this up.
Yeah. And so he ran over him, for the touchdown, like, he had him lined up and Cook just ran over him, and
he ran over Brian Cook.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. No, that's fine. I was like, I cannot remember. Like, I can see 6 clear as day. I could not remember his name for the life of me. Brain farting left and right, but he ran him over. We used to get like that play where you're talking about where Cook sets up the linebacker, that it was Bolton, and he sets up Bolton to get lost out in the wash in that gap and then comes through, which is exactly the kind of thing like we used to hear Tremaine Edmonds getting yelled at all the time, because he would be in the wrong gap and the running back would, almost trick him into being in the wrong gap. But Cook did that to Bolton. He almost baited him up into that gap and then cuts back through and then just runs over Cook at the 2. Just phenomenal power. And during the off season, a lot of guys said, Cook has put in a lot of work. You're gonna have to watch out for him. And I always attribute that mostly to just off-season talk. But you can look back now and see the results of that on the field, where like he has clearly added some mass. It's either mass or determination or both to his game. And because that is not a run we would have seen from him, his first year. And I don't think we even really would have seen it last year either.
100%. And that's so funny. He gained massive determination, but he in my eyes always had good contact balance, but he's definitely seemed to be a more physically imposing runner. And I wonder if that's, a part of what you were describing, off-season prep and work, which I'm sure it is, but also the style of runner that this offense seems to be breeding with the way this line blocks, especially and maybe a mentality of whether the team is coaching him up to try and run with more power, or whether he's just decided that I want to hurt people. Because again, following that move on the linebacker, Absolutely. Following that move on the linebacker also comes in with him just truck sticking to get into the end zone. And it's gorgeous. And I mean, even the week prior against the Colts, he breaks off for that long run after getting wrapped up and just able to stay on his feet, shed off a tackle, and move down the field. And he wins the scepter. So, like, he probably would have won the scepter again if Josh didn't have his run on fourth down,
right,
if we're being completely honest. So he's been great. And, it wasn't a clean game. I thought Ty Johnson was a nice little spark at times. He got through a little bit. And I feel like he's a nice – in Chiefs matchups of the past, he often seems to be the pivot they go to when they need a spark in the run game, because he just has like such great like acceleration, such great like after speed, that he just all of a sudden will get you like a quick 6-yard hitter and then another one right after. And like they start recognizing it, and you start adjusting a little bit. And I enjoyed Ty Johnson's performance, be it very limited in this game. But yeah, it wasn't clean. And I'm not happy that they had a bad rushing game and that they can look back and see what they got to adjust. But I do expect the team that really predicates itself on being able to like run and pass out of run looks and, run a lot of play action, which they did try doing a little bit in this game. I think they were sitting at like 19th total in the league as far as overall PA rate. I'll double check that. It might be a little lower after Monday Night Football. But a team that tries to use their run game to set up their passing game a bit more now, I would like to see that cleaned up going into, the winter months and going into tougher matchups. Again, the fronts you face over the next like 3 weeks are just as challenging when you play San Francisco and you play LA with a really, really, really fun emerging group of young linemen. And then Detroit, that even though there's no Hutchinson, they're sneaky, they're pesky. I know Reader's in the interior there, and they got some flying linebackers. So like, you're going to be tested again. So I'm hoping that can get cleaned up. But also, again, Kansas City's rushing defense is extremely good, extremely disciplined. They've had success against literally every team except for Lamar in week 1. So it's also not surprising that the team did have some issues running the football, and I think they could course correct going forward. But Chris, it's time to move on. Well, actually, do you have any final thoughts on running backs before we move on? Sorry.
No, like I was just going to add to the Ty Johnson piece that I think they clearly trust him pass blocking. And so I think that's part of why we saw him a bit more to this game than the other guys. He all told he had 8 pass blocking snaps in that game. That was far and away the most for any of the running backs. And so they clearly trust him with that responsibility, and that'll get you on the field. Especially against a team with a good pass rush, a team with as creative a blitz package as what Spags has, or just pass rush package as what Spags has. So yeah, like for a guy who can be an afterthought sometime as a player, like, he clearly has, the trust of the coaching staff.
No, I absolutely agree. And I was so excited when they brought him back for the 1 year. And I honestly would be happy if they brought him back again, because I think he's still a young enough guy. And I like what he brings to the table as far as the skill set goes. That unsung physicality, but the speed to match it. Like, Ty Johnson can do a lot of things in this league and would be, higher up in the running back totem pole for like a more running back needy team. Like, I think Ty Johnson right now would probably be running back 1 on like the Raiders or something like that. So again, I don't mean that as a slight. Like, I just think like he is a good enough
slight
back.
To the Raiders, but yeah.
Well, apologies, but like, they haven't been a good rushing offense. And like Ty Johnson is that kind of spark plug that if you had to turn to him for a game, I think you honestly could. I really like him as a running back 3. I think he's done his role really well, and I'd be totally cool with keeping him around for the foreseeable future if you had to. But we're going to pivot over to pass catchers, and I'm grouping all the, wide receiver, I guess somewhat running backs, not really, but, wide receiver, tight ends as pass catchers. But before we do, people, just going to quickly promote the one pass for every single one of you. If you want to become an insider today, then you better check that description below, because that description contains the link to sign up for the one pass. For just $60, you could become a one pass member. And I cannot stress enough that this one pass is the lifeblood of our network, as it allows us to have access to all of the resources that we use on a minute-to-minute, hour-to-hour, day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year, century-to-century basis to provide the content on our network, both written and live and video content that is not live. So if you are interested, check out the description and sign up. We have a great giveaway going on right now where we are giving away both a James Cook and a Ray Davis jersey to 2 lucky insiders that will be drawn in the beginning of December. And we have some awesome partnerships, including our partnership with 26 Shirts, where you have the opportunity, if you sign up, to get the awesome shirt that we have been promoting. It is an insanely cool design by some insanely talented people. So if you are interested, sign up in that link below. And again, we appreciate you. We appreciate you watching this show, all of the content on network, watching, reading, everything we do. If you could be as kind as to drop a like, it would be greatly appreciated by me, by everybody. Now, Chris, let's move on to the pass catchers. And this is the star of the show, the receivers, the tight ends. Granted, tight ends a little bit more modest. Dawson Knox had some big receptions. Quentin Morris almost had his timely reception of the game. Zach Davidson got his first reception, first NFL career reception. But you could talk about them in this, but I really want to talk about the wide receivers, because the wide receivers to me were the star of the show. And I'll turn this to you before I give my take, Chris. Your thoughts on these pass catchers?
Well, I am sure you've got something coming for Khalil Shakir. So I just want to throw a little bit of flowers towards Curtis Samuel. Like in the last 2 weeks, he's gotten his highest number of targets. Now, some of that might be injury related, but also like this week, was clearly his best game as a Bill. He had an EPA per play over 1, a big touchdown where he shows that athleticism to keep his balance and still manage to get into the end zone, presenting himself as an outlet on that cover 0 blitz for Josh. And then also showing, just kind of that tantalizing athleticism on another catch on the sideline where he jukes the defender out, gains another 10 yards on that play. There's a lot of talent there. But the thing that kind of intrigued me the most is that he had 0 catches behind the line of scrimmage this week. And I'm so ready to see that change in how Joe Brady uses Curtis Samuel, because we were all excited about the ways to manufacture touches for Curtis Samuel. And, for the first few weeks, that really looked like just like screens, other behind the line of scrimmage passes or touches for him. And like everyone in the league appeared to know that was coming. Like everybody looked back at that Joe Brady, Curtis Samuel tape from 2020 and, saw the same stuff. And, it seemed like every behind the line of scrimmage touch for Samuel was a gain of 1 yard or less, because everybody was ready for it. And this game, 0 targets behind the line of scrimmage, and he was being used more as a playmaker over these last couple of weeks instead of just a manufactured touch guy. And I think in the way they use the wide receiver group, if they want to be able to be a dynamic room where there's the versatility that we talked about all off season, then don't pigeonhole this guy. Like let him also be versatile, because if he has, some deep shots or even some, more 10 to 20 yard shots, then that's going to give more room for those, closer to the line of scrimmage plays. And I think the way they are starting to adapt how they use him, is really promising.
Absolutely. And last week, I begged the fan base to stop being mean to Curtis Samuel, because I felt like there was a part of it is justifiable to be upset that it wasn't panning out because there were no results. It wasn't really productive in any way. I think the highest mark he had prior to this game and last week's game was hitting like 30 yards, if that. So it was underwhelming, but also the turf toe he suffered in camp, I think, slowed him down. And I think that lingered for quite a while before he had the pec injury that really sidelined him. And all of a sudden, he gets some time to kind of be away and rest and recover. And I don't know how much of a difference that might have made or if it was already getting better, but it definitely played a role, and his explosiveness wasn't there. And I think even if you just look at the fact that Shakir was getting screens too, and I don't know if it was defended as differently as it was with Samuel, but, Shakir getting screens and looking infinitely more explosive to me was more of an indictment on the fact that Samuel didn't have that burst of explosiveness right out of the gate. So I'm glad you brought brought up how they used him too, because using him over the middle of the field and, as an occasional gadget guy, but not only a gadget guy, someone that was going to be kind of an alternating slot receiver with the ability to go vertical on certain looks, on certain defenses that they were showing you. That to me was what I envisioned. And to see it kind of come into fruition in this game, especially where he was getting a mix of midfield, he was on the mesh pattern coming across, or if you're talking about the going down the field and being on a vertical route and being able to make that play and also draw a very big pass interference penalty. Like, Curtis Samuel deserves flowers for this game. He had a great game, and I'm very happy that we're starting to see the wheels turn on his usage and how they utilize him. Even when Coleman comes back, I still think Samuel's going to have a lot of play. And again, this receiving core isn't the best version of itself right now. So the fact that you won this game without having Coleman and Kincaid in addition, I think is huge to benefit these guys and now get them at defenses to worry about them if you do turn to them on certain looks. But we got to talk about Khalil Shakir. We got to talk about my glorious king, my yak king, my slot receiver god who has emerged from Boise, Idaho to become the savior of the Bills receiving core, at least right now. I also before I do that, I got to quickly shout out Amari Cooper, not just for his post-game answers, but the two very big catches he had at the beginning of the game and that insane catch on the Josh lob off the blitz that he managed to keep his feet in for. I thought for sure that was getting overturned. It was literally right there as far as how thin the margin of error was for that to be overturned. So I got to shout out Amari Cooper, who came through when you needed him. It wasn't an overwhelming game, but he contributed. But Khalil Shakir, man, that third down catch is everything.
Oh, my Lord.
It embodies everything. Dead. I hope he's okay. I hope he got a lidocaine patch as soon as he got back to his house. Relaxing on the couch right now, like just chilling, because that catch embodies everything I love about Khalil Shakir's game. It embodies everything that he can do for this offense and how valuable he is, not even just for just this receiving core, but for Josh Allen as a quarterback going forward, because his body control, his sure-handed nature, the ability to play through contact, the ability to bounce off tackles, the ability to grind those extra yards every time he gets the ball is so freaking impressive, but also just such a fundamental staple of how this offense can continue to be effective, even when it's not those over the middle shots are going down the field. He's an exceptional player. He is an absolute monster. I mean, I actually really like this comment from Charles, who says he's a mini Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know that comparison has been made. I think Anthony might have said it, not directly. I don't want to put words in his mouth as much as he's like likened a similarity to him. Right. But like, you look at how these two receivers play, and there are similarities. Plus the fact that Shakir wants to get his hands dirty as a blocker. Like, I cannot gush enough about this player and what he's emerged into, considering how kind of limited his usage was the first 2 years to become where, the player he is now, how good of a route runner he's been, how well and effective he is in the middle of the field, especially when it's whether man-to-man or zone, the ability again to just make the catches even through traffic in contact. He's an exceptional player. I think he deserves Pro Bowl nods. And this might be homerist. I think he deserves all pro nods at some point if he keeps this play up. And I know that's going to sound ridiculous. I'm going to get crucified for that. I just love Khalil Shakir, and like going beyond the stat sheet and watching what he does for this Bills receiving core. Like, he's a phenomenal player. I'm excited. Chris, what do you think before we move on to defense?
Yeah, I totally agree about Shakir. And, like he has become that go-to target. We talked about, with Diggs gone, who's going to be the X? Well, Shakir isn't the X, but he is the main target. He has become that go-to receiver. He had 12 targets yesterday. Next closest was 6 on the team, and it is like it's such a weird place to be talking about the Bills leading the league in yak or close to league leaders in yak. Like, for years, we, as a fan base, we begged for yak, like, help Josh out, like, make this work a little better. I feel kind of like Gandalf, the Gandalf meme, like, I have no memory of this place. Like, for us to be leading the league in yak is just so bizarre. It's so weird. And, to watch the way he moves with the ball in his hands is, it's just a hell of a lot of fun, really, more so than anything. And he has a very natural contact balance, and he has a feel for where defenders are and how to set up moves, and like almost like a pass rusher where you're like building moves on top of each other. Like, those guys that are truly exceptional movement athletes will stack moves on top of each other in the open field, and he has that capacity as well. And like that's just a lot of fun to watch, and the type of thing that looks like poetry in motion, to watch a guy out there like that. And yeah, we could not sing his praises enough right now.
Mm-hmm. We were always talking in years past about like who's going to be that next Beasley role, because we know how much
Mhm.
Josh loves it. I thought it'd be Shakir or maybe even Samuel, but really Shakir, just for like the youth factor and
Mhm.
the abilities that we've been describing, the traits. But now I'm more confident that that is his role. And also, we might even try to change it to who's going to be the next Shakir, because it's not
Right.
a knock on what Beasley has done for Josh
Mhm.
Allen's development and this offense, because Cole Beasley was exceptional when he was healthy in Buffalo, and what he did for Josh and trusting the middle of the field.
Mhm.
Also, just, Cole Beasley being a nasty slot receiver, like in the sense that
Yeah.
he was just so disgusting at route running and
Mhm.
being able to create space in tight windows, exceptional player. And we were looking for that next person to kind of take that
Mhm.
role. But what I think Shakir's doing is he took that role, he has it, but he also expands upon it again with some of the backfield work, whether it's a screen, a swing pass, or some quick hitter that you can get to him, that he's just so damn effective with the ball in his
Yeah.
hands, as you've pointed out,
Yeah.
as we've been talking about. So, the rest of this episode could be devoted to Khalil Shakir, and I think that would be okay. But due for the interest of time, I do have to expedite this convo. But listen, I love Shakir. I think this wide receiver core had a really nice game, not only in just the capacity of like, them being willing blockers, even though it wasn't totally effective, but just how effective they
Mhm.
were as pass catchers. Mac Hollins had a nice reception towards the end of the game that
Yep.
helped keep the drive going. He
Mhm.
wasn't really that visible, but definitely contributed and definitely was getting down as a blocker.
Yep.
So
He set up
I'm
he
very
set up
happy.
the block on mesh to let Samuel
Mm.
free on that touchdown. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Oh,
forgot about that.
dirty work guy doing dirty work stuff. Yeah.
Pulled up to the game in a construction fit, I believe. I don't know if you saw that,
I
but he
didn't catch
actually
that.
did.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, he's something else, man.
Is he
Another
still in
guy.
overalls for all his TikToks? He was doing his
No, he's been doing like this mad scientist thing.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
joking. He wears a lab coat with goggles and he has a wig on, and he's that guy's something else, dude.
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
even.
Like,
But like, I
yep.
like it. And
Yep.
I think
Okay.
he's another guy I'd be comfortable with bringing back. I mean, just for the
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
multifaceted role,
Yep.
he's etched himself in this receiving core as a reliable, I would say fourth, sometimes even
Mhm.
third target with special teams juice and blocking ability. So I'm
Yep.
very happy. I think this is a great comment from Cispinar too, who says Hollins is far better than we have any right to expect for him for that
Yep.
contract.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yep.
100%. And good comment from Steve before we pivot over to defense, because if you didn't see the tagline, guys, the D line is going to be probably the forefront of the rest of this episode. We'll try to include everybody, but based upon Cooper's post game interview, do you guys believe he may consider a little hometown discount to stay in the best situation of his career? See, I don't always think this is going to happen, but listening to him talk about it, like you could tell there
Mhm.
is an actual like good vibe going with him and
Yep.
being a part of
Mhm.
a team that's 9-2 at a mark where they're very clearly showing they're contenders in the AFC, and him being a part of it and making crucial contributions to that. I mean, Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I don't I'm not sure anybody ever takes a hometown discount. Like maybe Tom Brady did, but I'll
Mm,
always probably believe that he was getting money on the side somehow, somewhere, um, because I think he's a deceitful little maniac. But that's another story. Um, so I'm not sure I believe in hometown discounts, but I do think that if he had two very similar offers and one of them was from Buffalo, that Buffalo might have an edge in
mm,
that. Like, and I wouldn't blame anybody for going after the money in this game. um but like, do I think Cooper, at this point right now is, into that kind of honeymoon phase, and it's nice to win and it's nice to have a real quarterback again, because he hadn't had one since he'd left Dallas. And I think that's got to feel good. Like, winning's always more fun, right?
mm,
So I think there could be a chance there for him to, maybe he takes a year less for similar money to stay in the Bills, that type of thing. But I don't think anybody at the stage they are in their career where Cooper is, like this might be his last chance for a good sized contract.
Right.
So I can't imagine he would take less money. But if there's two similar offers on the table, yeah, he might pick Buffalo over that. Yeah.
And by next season, I think he's going to be 31 years old. So the great point about it being kind of the last opportunity for significant money, but his style of receiving too ages a little bit better because he's not fully reliant on speed as much as he's reliant on his route running ability and creating separation. And, his hands that can work in contested windows too on display in that Kansas City game, excuse me.
Yep.
So, I don't know about a hometown discount, but I also don't think the contract he's going to net is going to be fairly sizable either. Like, again, just for the age component, just for the fact that he's been kind of moved around a bit. If he doesn't finish the year with stellar numbers, I think that would also play a role. So I'd be curious. I think the Bills would try to bring him back, but also like knowing them and how many draft picks they have, it also wouldn't shock me that if they had like a tantalizing receiving prospect in their sights that, could very well be there towards the end of like the first, like a Isaiah Bond or like an Emeka Egbuka, like then I think they might be more comfortable doing that. I'm speaking that into existence. I love Egbuka, but I also like Cooper a lot. I like what he's bringing. So let's see how the rest of the year pans out. If it's a good rest of the year, I'd be comfortable with it, but I don't know if it will happen. So let's move on to defense, Chris, and we're going to start with the D-line. Probably the best game the D-line has had all season, if not one of the best. The four-man pressures were effective, and obviously that was paired with really tight coverage down the field. Sometimes the coverage got hit, sometimes not. But when it was working, the pass rush was getting through. I thought, just as a general overview, this was one of Gregory Rousseau's best games of his career, and the stat sheet doesn't say that, but I'd be going as far as to say that this was the best game he's had since that 3-sack game. Since Tennessee. He was a force, a menace. Ed Oliver looked like his old self for a lot of that game. I know there was a comment from RJ about Daquan Jones, but that interception happened because Daquan Jones brings down Mahomes. Epineza makes a really nice play in the ball and has a couple of nice run defense plays and pressures. Your thoughts on this D-line and people you want to point out or metrics you want to point out?
Yeah, no, I think it begins and ends with Groot. Now he was getting to go up against, the tackles for Kansas City are not the strength of that line, but, he got Mahomes off his spot for the sack for Miller. There were just a number of ways he was constantly creating havoc for the Chiefs. Like when we talked about where they're having problems on late downs, that was largely because of the pressure that Groot was creating. A lot of the issues that Kansas City had in execution started with the defensive line's performance.
Yeah, they were disruptive. The interior defensive line was getting push. They were making plays in the run game. There was a really, really nice play of Ed Oliver just completely mutilating a double team to get a stop at the goal line. There was, and again, the syncopation with them and the linebacking core, specifically Terrel Bernard, who we will highlight too, can't be spoken enough. When they're all healthy and all together, I do think they could play their best ball. And it was really interesting that they just didn't the past few weeks, like specifically the IDL, and it was disappointing, but that's a game that you feel good about. That's a game that you say, like, there's still a lot of talent on the Kansas City O-line, and they were able to get the push. And when they were doubled up, they were able to shed the blocks. And Ed looked like Ed, and Ed might be getting healthier because I know he had the hamstring problem, and he might actually be becoming himself again. These are the things you needed to see. This was a game that I was extremely pleased with, but, Gregory Rousseau, man, we were talking about it before we went live. Like, what he's doing as a run defender in this game is awesome. Again, like how he can move a tackle around to just make that play. But as a pass rusher, even if it wasn't the best tackle on him, he was just disrupting everything in this game. He was getting through. He was putting Morris in a blender at times, using his length to push him out of the way. I was talking to Chris about this, but there was one play I specifically saw where he kind of stabs and gets that shoulder, moves him out of the way, then uses his opposite arm to pull Mahomes and like set him up. I think it was the sack that Steve is describing right here, the Miller sack. I think that's when it happened because he created kind of the pressure that closed it off for Miller to finish it. And like, that's a thing too. Like Vaughn had his reps where he was getting a lot of push and pressure, had his sack. That pairing of the two right now, when healthy, and I hope it stays this way, That to me is the difference. That is when you talk about getting to the playoffs against the Kansas City Chiefs or one of these teams, it feels like each of the past few years, they haven't had the difference-making pass rush. Maybe there were injuries that affected it, like in that Bengals game. Maybe Rousseau wasn't 100% and Epineza wasn't 100% and Von Miller was recovering or wasn't there. If you actually have this group, this duo this year, I think it's a notable difference in how teams are able to plan against you and the concerns over pressure. And Rousseau emerging each and every year as a pass rusher, and having this game, I'm so happy. I'm very excited for him, and he deserves all the flowers because he played one of the best games of his career. I'm very pleased. Chris, any more thoughts?
It's a role reversal for Groot in a lot of ways. His year at Miami, he got credited. People said he was getting a lot of mop-up sacks, and it's just kind of funny now because he created the pressure that got Von Miller a mop-up sack, versus Kansas City, and it's obviously Von's getting older, but it's cool to see that that development for Groot. To be not just a great run defender, like he holds the edge on a line, as well as any defensive end in the league. But to be adding those top tier pass rush moves also onto what he can do already against the run, the sky's the limit for that guy, and really and truly they need to extend him yesterday. So
I agree with that. And hey, you guys want to hear something even cooler? He's not even 25. He turns 25 in April. So like we may not have even seen his prime. We may not have even seen Greg Rousseau's ceiling yet, which is why I think an extension at a rate that's probably still going to be lower than like the market would be great, because I don't think the best ball has happened yet. And I think, just someone to build around is such a stable edge defender for you. Like, I love Rousseau. I want to keep him around. I think his career arc has been exciting. And, with all the traits and tools he had coming out of college and what you were building with that, to see it coming into fruition again, it's encouraging. I love it. And I'm looking forward to the future of Greg Rousseau, and even more looking forward to the future of Terrel Bernard and this linebacker core, because obviously Matt Milano is probably coming back in like 2 weeks, but not in this game. So you had Dorian Williams and Terrel Bernard. And I know Eric highlighted this, but Terrel Bernard's matchup on Travis Kelce, his commanding of the front seven. He's exceptional. Chris, floor is yours. Talk to me about Terrel Bernard. Tell me nice things.
Tell you nice things. Like that was a game where I'm not sure I was aware of it while it was happening until that last interception. Like the degree to which he shut down Kelce, like as a team, they shut down Kelce, but watching more of the film, you saw Bernard moving to cut off passing lanes to Kelce, just to pinch passing lanes a little bit to Kelce. At that first play of the game where Mahomes throws the interception, I was actually a little bit worried because Bernard and Williams both closed towards Kelce and left that receiver wide open in that opening, and Mahomes just missed him, gratefully, thankfully. And I was like, okay, let's not give Kelce so much attention that we let everyone else feast today. But they managed to, shrink those passing lanes. They managed to redirect him, and like at every turn, Bernard was just doing everything he could to make Kelce's day miserable. And it was a joy to watch.
Not having Terrel Bernard in that playoff game was a huge blow. And you see the difference in what can happen with the Bills matching up against the Kansas City, main tight end and Kelce, I should say. Although Noah Gray played a phenomenal game. I got to give him a lot of credit. He looked really, really good. And, the move he pulled on Rasul Douglas on that final touchdown they scored was exceptional. But that was, I don't know if Douglas thought there was going to be someone behind him on that or if he just got beat. But Noah Gray's underrated. I just got to give him a shout out. Like that dude's nice. And like when Kelce inevitably, decides to hang him up, I think Noah Gray is going to be a really nice fill-in for them as like their next tight end, because he's got moves, man, as a blocker, as a receiver, as a route runner. Like he's nice. But I think Terrel Bernard is just such a joy to watch, for the sense that like since he started, it never looked like there was any growing pains with him. He always has commanded himself, carried himself, and looked like a true veteran. You could see how aggressively he gets everyone on the same page when he communicates pre-snap, and how hard he is on himself when something is just like a little bit off. Like there was a catch by, I think it was it was either DeAndre Hopkins, it might have been Hardman, I can't quite remember, where he just like kind of hits himself because he knows he was a little bit out of his depth. And that same thing happened on the touchdown catch to, I believe, was also Noah Gray, where he's just a little deep and he realizes he's a little deep, and you could see him kind of reacting. Like Terrel Bernard has carried himself like a captain, carried himself like a true pro. But when you see the subtleties in his pass coverage, his aggression in run defense, how he's shedding blocks, and, you know, again, not perfect. There were times where he got beat. I think that to me is just why he's so valuable. And again, when you know you got that guy behind you as a D lineman to help clean things up and help like mitigate some of the rushing threat, it's really encouraging for the future. Kansas City still had a decent day on the ground. Kareem Hunt still had 60 yards, and I believe he averaged like 4.3 yards per carry. Yeah, but it was still, I'll actually look that up to make sure. But
it was 60 and 4.3 a pop.
4.3, cool. Had it off the memory. But, you know, he was very effective, and he's been very effective. And, you know, when you talk about this team not being a blitz heavy team, but occasionally bringing the pressure, I think that's a role best suited for him. That's going to become even more expansive when Matt Milano comes back. So Terrel Bernard is an awesome player. I think, again, deserves way more credit than he gets. Last year was exceptional. The ending interception was just such a cool play off script to just know damn well that ball is going to Travis Kelce in a pinch and just jump that route and make a crazy athletic play for a guy whose RAS score wasn't crazy. Like, it's so cool. I'm so happy with Bernard. And, you know, Dorian Williams, you know, did what he had to do. I didn't really notice anything like exceptional or bad from him, as much as it was really just like playing his role.
Which is a huge growth, though, you know, because like he is the kind of player whose aggression and inexperience should let Mahomes toy with him. And Mahomes did toy with him some last year. And you know, for him to not be exposed was a huge sign of growth. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, nothing seemed like it was too glaringly bad as far as like a busted coverage or anything. And there were plays where he flew and made like a really nice tackle. Times where he was a little like, again, like it seemed either out of position or he was just sitting in zone and didn't react quickly enough to a very quick pass coming his way, which is hard to do. But, you know, those little things, but nothing terrible. And honestly, the linebacking core in this game, I think, helped propel them to a really solid defensive performance against a tough team. And you just hope they stay healthy, because in the not hopeful, I hope we don't have to play him again and we could just go to and win a championship without having to deal with the freaking Chiefs. But listen, it's just like you kind of expect it, just given the nature of the Chiefs and how far they get every year. But I'm just hopeful that if that matchup does happen, you wind up with a healthy group of linebackers, because they're just a different beast defensively when you have your main signal caller, your guy that can set everybody up, the guy that can actually cover because he's smart enough to know where he's got to be and what you like to do, and be an aggressor and run defense and shoot gaps well, the heat-seeking missile. So great performance. Chris, we'll wrap this up by going to the secondary. I'll group them all together, safeties and corners. Again, I thought Taylor Rapp made some nice plays in run defense. You know, I thought there was really more cleanup duty for them. I didn't see anything glaringly bad. A couple nice tackles I know there was a nice one from DeMar Hamlin near the goal line, but I want to highlight Christian Benford, who I thought played a really nice game, made a couple really nice tackles, whether it was run defense, and also a very big pass breakup against DeAndre Hopkins that ultimately led to the Chiefs stalling out and the Bills getting the ball back and taking more time off the clock. That play where it was just man coverage and he gets up on top of him, D-Hop has the ball in his hands and he sees it through and gets it out at the very end. That is really nice play against a very good receiver who's known for making those catches. So I'm pleased with the secondary performance. Chris, any big thoughts you wanted to share on this topic?
And, you know, like they held Patrick Mahomes to under 200 yards passing, you know, like, and it was a game where Kansas City was behind, you know, for good chunks of the game. And no, Mahomes doesn't have all of the passing weapons that he's always had, but he is still an outstanding quarterback. And, you know, to have that guy under 200 passing yards for the day, you know, and like you mentioned, Benford, at least according to PFF, gave up 7 receiving yards on the day, you know, you know, just phenomenal work. I'm eager to see, you know, Eric and Ant talk tomorrow about what they did differently with Xavier Worthy, you know, after that first drive, you know, because, like in my nervous mafia, right? You know, that first drive where Worthy had 4 catches, like I just do not want to deal with, you know, Bills fans like complaining about that trade again, you know, if Xavier Worthy has a breakout game of his career today. And
Mhm.
I don't know what they started to do different, or if Kansas City just got really frustrated with him after he stepped out of bounds on that wide open play. But the defensive performance overall, was everybody did their 111th, and that backfield to, the combination of Bernard and the safeties, particularly Cam Lewis, to like doing work to help shut down Kelsey, and Gray had a really good day. He's an up and coming player, but they held that passing game down on a day when Kansas City needed to fight back some to get back in the game. And kudos to everybody back there. Because there wasn't anything that stood out, like you mentioned, like this terribly broken play that ended up in, like, a 60-yard KC touchdown, which is something they still thrive on. But they couldn't create explosives the way the Bills did. I think the explosive difference was just one play for Kansas City, and the Bills had 6. They would have had 2 if Worthy had any field awareness to save his life. But the differential in those explosive plays, was a big part of why the Bills win the game.
Yeah, I'm happy that Worthy catch didn't end up amounting to anything, because Worthy, for the second time this year, I believe, didn't realize where the boundary was.
Yep.
And a part of
At
that
least
is
the
on
second
Mahomes.
time. Yep.
And a part of that is on how Mahomes threw the ball. Daniel Harms, who was with us, pointed it out, because he's a Chiefs analyst and he follows them very closely and just provides great insight. If you guys aren't following him too, in Harm's Way 19, I think it is. Shout out to him. He's always been awesome, and he was a ton of fun to like speak to and work with. But he had a brief discussion about it, and he was kind of asking the same question about why they got away from Worthy, because it was effective. And one of the things about the Chiefs is, you see kind of the vulnerability with the Bills and how teams can kind of lead them with misdirection and use speed to the perimeter to be able to kind of exploit them and get extra yardage from it. And, Worthy was a problem that seemed to have just disappeared. And, a part of that might have been how they switched up defense, but also maybe more so trying to get them to get out of those one high looks, because the one thing was the Bills were running a lot of one high in this game that I think confused Mahomes. I think it was like, and I asked Anthony about this. He didn't have the exact figure, but he was suspecting like late 40%. So I'm curious what that actually is. But like one
I think
high,
I heard 47%. Man,
okay,
something like that. Yeah, so it might have been from Ant. Yeah.
So it was extremely like threatening with the speed of Worthy, especially going deep and getting burned on that play that thankfully didn't count. So maybe it could have been a bit of a pivot. I'd have to go back and watch more closely on how they were aligning, but that was something I just wanted to call out with the safeties too, and really the defensive game plan, because, I was saying last week, I wanted them to blitz a bit more, and they blitzed, I think it was the 16th highest tick in the league, at least at the time I looked, because this was pre-Monday Night Football, so I'd have to check, but they were still blitzing at a slightly higher rate than they normally do. And I noticed that was paired with some different structure in how they're covering. Again, not that they haven't, but more so how frequently they were using it was more often than how they have in games past. And I was kind of sitting here thinking, like, I like that, like pivot, and I like that change. But ultimately, you sit in it enough times, they're going to recognize that you're in man. They're going to recognize it's a pressure look, or they're going to try and, maybe do a ball fake, which Mahomes did a few times, get play action going and burn you downfield. So, I thought the safety still played a good game, whether it was tackling, whether it was in coverage, with many times that Pat Mahomes had to hold the ball a little extra. And again, our corners, Douglas did get beat on the one play, but like, I thought they played a really good game. I thought Christian Bedford was once again really, really good. And, the return on investment for a player that you got in the 6th round is just really nice to see. And he's emerging as a star young corner in the NFL. So, overall thoughts, Chris, on this matchup? Anything you just want to say before we sign off, or any final thoughts?
No, like to hold the Chiefs to 21 points, even if they're not the offense they've been before, to keep the Chiefs down to 21 points, to score 30 plus against that defense, like just a remarkably well executed game plan. And just give me Matt Milano, back in the playoffs. Give me Keon Coleman. Like, one thing I still wish to see is I want to watch Keon Coleman jump over Trent McDuffie and his little
Mm.
T-Rex arms. He's an outstanding cornerback, but I want to see them take advantage of that size difference, to just I'll just enjoy that extra, to watch that happen, because he's outstanding and they took him from us. And but Keon Coleman, has those physical skills that make that kind of thing potentially possible. So I'll dream. But to get Milano back, I think maybe in the playoffs you might see Anku instead of Phillips on the defensive line. So I think there's several things to make us still feel even better about the potential matchup in the playoffs, and that's going to be the one that matters. Got to get past these guys.
It's something that, you've had your opportunities and there's a narrative around you that you just can't get it done in the playoffs. And Kansas City has been the constant, with the exception of 1 year of Deshaun Watson and 1 year of Joe Burrow, but really more so like McDermott's defense in the playoffs and the metrics changing drastically. And, the things that Eric and Anthony have talked about like how the changes happen and what changes and what that can do to the defense as far as slowing them down. So this year is a potential opportunity, if you do match up with them again, to right the ship. And I think a part of that does entail, can your D-line stay healthy and can your pass rush stay healthy? Because I think if it does, it's a different ball game, especially if you do decide that you want to rush for more often, which, again, even this week, despite them having a higher than normal blitz numbers, they primarily rushed for it. And I think that this team has an opportunity to right that ship with a really solid game, but that's all going to depend on how Kansas City pivots and how you adjust. I do think that the Xavier Worthy lack of usage it wasn't intentional, but it's something that I think they saw in this matchup as a potential spark plug for what they can do in the future, because he's a threat. And, he's not just a pure speed guy. That guy could run routes. That guy's shifty and he's got good hands. And honestly, the thing about his frame worried me a little bit, but when he took that hit in the open field and got right up, it made me a little more reassured that he can take those hits at the NFL. So Worthy's a threat. Worthy's a problem. And he's someone that, you keep your eye on in that matchup. But again, like you said, Matt Milano wasn't there in this game. And what does that look like when he comes back? And then pivoting over to the offense, not having Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid, and now being able to be more expansive the next time you play them, if you do play them again. That matters too, what you can get away with having Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman in 11 personnel, or even in 12, and being able to have the physical presence of Keon Coleman and what he could do, especially if you work the ball to him quick. This is a team that I think could compete with anybody right now, the way they're currently structured. And the win that they just got on Kansas City proves that. I think it gives them a lot of juice and confidence, but also gives them a little bit of padding now that they're going into the bye week and playing some tough teams lying ahead in the NFC. Really, really awesome win for them with some great performances that we've highlighted tonight. And I'm very pleased. Chris, any final thoughts?
No, thanks for having me on. It's great to beat the Chiefs. It is great to have a essentially 5-game lead in the AFC East over your rivals who are just spiraling. It's a great time to be a Bills fan. Go enjoy the bye week. Get ready for potentially a couple of rough few weeks coming out of the bye with some really good teams, but it'll be an opportunity for them to test themselves like they did against Kansas City, and to test their mettle, to see where they stand against the best teams in the league, against Detroit, against San Francisco. Find out who you are. Get that test in now, and then start to build up for the playoffs.
I honestly, man, I want them to win all three. I want them to win every game that they're playing for the rest of the year. But if they win even one of the three, you're kind of fine. Again, because after that, you got the 2 New England games. Who, by the way, I like New England is obviously not a complete version of themselves yet, but Drake May looks good. Drake May is going to be a very good quarterback. So I'm expecting next year to be the year, or honestly this year to be the year where we start dealing with the headache that is Drake May in our division. So, but yeah, they got a sizable lead. They got a sizable, sizable lead in the divisional race that I think, Miami had an opportunity to make this competitive, but of course, Tua's unfortunate injury takes him out for that many games. He comes back and now their offense is clicking and they're getting it going, but they might have the opportunity to get the 7th seed still, but now with Denver and the Colts in front of you and Colts having the head-to-head against Miami, that becomes more difficult for them. So, it's nice to feel comfortable, and I would love an early clinch of the division, and I would love for that to happen, in the beginning of December, but we'll just have to see. But Chris, I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. I know, every conversation we have is always a ton of fun, and I'm curious, and I think the people are curious. What do you got going on, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so really enjoying producing with Eric and Ant in the Cover One film room. That comes out on Wednesdays. Also helping Greg produce the Greg Thompson football show. We do that halftime on Thursday nights and Sunday nights. So best halftime show in the business. Come catch Greg. And then also enjoying writing for Sports Illustrated. And I am hoping in the next month to get back on my game and get a little bit more into schedule with that. The last month has been really rough with finding time for that, but it's a remarkable opportunity. And guys like Greg Vorse and Kyle Salagi and David Foxy and Uber Hansen, all those guys are doing a great job, carrying that brand. And it is, it's a lot of fun to be on that team as well. And yeah, so thanks for having me on. Always a good time with Show DeRosa and Under Review. And I am really proud of myself for not having any garage doors or smoke alarms or any other potentially like glaring sounds. So things are looking up.
It would be absolutely hilarious if right now all those things happened at once. But Chris, I appreciate you being here, man. And yeah, guys, our Sports Illustrated, like Bill's SI team is awesome. Like everyone's writing fantastic content that you should be checking out if you haven't already. As Chris alluded to, like all the other writers we got with Greg, Kyle, Foxy, and Uber, like these guys, like Chris, like you guys all do fantastic work. So please check it out if you haven't already and give Chris a follow, because Chris is also posting his own cut-ups and posting analytics that I think you should be checking out. You'd be doing yourself a disservice to not be keeping up. But that's the end of our show, guys. I appreciate all of you being here. If you are a fan of the show, if you enjoyed the conversation, feel free to drop a like on this video. Again, get it in front of more Bills fans' faces as they can check it out and revel in the joys of victory. This was a lot of fun, Chris. Thank you again. For me, my name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter /X at @show_DeRosa for Blue Sky users that may have found this show through the link I posted, at joederosa.bsky.social. Thank you all so much for being here. We truly appreciate you. Going to be back next week. I have Alex Brasky coming on to talk about the San Francisco 49ers matchup and the post-bye week look of the team, seeing if everyone's good, who's practicing, who's not. We'll find that all out. Although it is Tuesday, it's very early in the week. But again, thank you all so much, everyone. Check out the One Pass in the description below. Don't close your browser if you are on YouTube, because Mr. Anthony Prohaska is live at 9:00 to do a bi-week superlative episode, and that is appointment viewing. Anthony is a fantastic guest on the show and a fantastic creator in our channel. Give the show a watch. You're very much going to enjoy it. But for our show, we're done. Y'all have a great rest of your evening, and as always, go Bills. We'll see you soon.